BBC Radio.
6 Music.
You are now entering a parallel universe. And wipe your feet on the way in.
Marc Riley, BBC 6 Music.
Pretty fabulous, you would have to say. Alice Cooper, hello, hooray. I'm Marc Riley in the company of Mr. Bobby Hughes.
Oh, hello, mate. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks, pal. Yeah, I'm fine. Are you?
Great, yeah, fine. You informed me that was done by Judy Collins first.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well,
Right.
I only know it because we've played it before, and then you do the bits of research and all that. But yeah,
Right, okay. So we're looking
it's
at...
got that theatrical kind of bent to it, hasn't it?
Yeah,
You can see.
that, definitely. So we're looking at disc here after they dropped the And Music Echo, 20th of October 1973. And I can't tell you who's on the cover because I got this sort of cheap on eBay because it's got no cover on it.
Right.
So just guess. But there is a colour spread of Rod Stewart in the middle.
That's all you need.
If you like that kind of thing. In the news this week, Pete Townshend's Tommy is definitely to be staged at Christmas again this year. Lou Reisner told Disc this week that he's booked London's Rainbow for 2 nights in December. He says, now I'm busy getting the same cast together who did it last year. They want to do it. It all depends on availability of everybody working out right and coordinating, etc. Last year's star-studded cast included Mary Clayton and Richie Havens, who flew in from America specially, Rod Stewart, Maggie Bell, Peter Sellers, Steve Winwood and Graham Bell, plus of course The Who.
It's a big old unit.
It is. Also in the news, several London fans will be invited onto the River Thames boat, Windsor Castle, where David Essex is filming for the American NBC television show Midnight Special. As reported last week, David will be singing Rock On and his new single. Fans who want to make the trip should be at Westminster Pier at 7:30 in the morning today, Wednesday, October the 17th, where the Windsor Castle is moored. That's a bit unfair, because then it's a tiny note underneath that says, London readers of Disc get their copies of the paper slightly earlier than the rest of the country.
Oh, I remember that, actually, yeah. So they used to happen with all the music papers. I think they would get them on a Wednesday, yeah.
That's right,
And we'd get them on a Thursday.
Yeah. Mick Ronson is to take his new band on the road in the early part of next year. They've just returned from France, where they've been recording their first album. And for the next month, Ronson will be in the studio mixing it. The album, along with a single, will be released at the beginning of January. Full details on centre pages. So we can talk Ronson in a bit, because there is a full interview with him, actually. And Ronnie Lane's first recording since Leaving the Faces in June will be out on a 3-track maxi single in November, produced by Glyn Johns, on the record, which will have a full colour sleeve, it says.
Woo!
Lane is accompanied by the band Slim Chance. He's now in the process of getting a touring band together to go out on the road early in the new year, coinciding with the release of his first solo album. So this is the start of him as the sort of wandering minstrel, isn't it? He bought a 100-acre farm in Wales and thought, let's do a circus show.
Yeah, would the first single have been The Poacher?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. Very
It's a
possibly.
beautiful song, isn't it? But
is.
and somebody posted a vid of that on Twitter just a couple of days ago. And possibly also off the back of us playing, because it was somebody who listened to the programme, but maybe not, the fact that we played Debris by The Faces last week as well, which is a beautiful song.
Yeah, it is.
Ronnie Lane at the helm.
Yeah. Meanwhile, a completed album of music from the forthcoming film Mahoney's Estate, made jointly by Ronnie Lane and The Faces' Ron Wood, and called Wood Lane, has been held for release in the new year. Great title. And there's a one-page feature on Marc Bolan. So bearing in mind this is October 73. Says Britain's electric warrior now looks like a young Greek god. Gone are the corkscrew curls, and gone for good is every bit of glam and glitter. Holidaying in Nassau gave him a bronzed body, and his wife June gave him a new short crop. Marc explained, I don't want to be involved with the old image of Marc Bolan or glam rock or glitter rock or anything, because I really believe it's all a thing of the past. It's been overdone too many times, and I'm an artist and I feel insulted to be involved with anybody who sticks makeup all over the face. I find it embarrassing, to be quite honest.
It is strange, isn't it? Because, I mean, he is credited with going to see Bowie and the hype at the Roundhouse, and then that was the night that glam rock was invented. So Bowie and the band pretty much started it. But Marc Bolan did have glitter on his face and it was a Roman breastplate, wasn't it? From Woolworths.
From Woolworths, that's exactly it. And there is apparently a photograph of him. I've yet to see it, but I think Ray Stevenson took a photograph of him. He's in the front row, supposedly, isn't he, with this Roman breastplate on.
Yeah.
So Disc, having said that, Disc asks, is this the same Marc Bolan who practically started the whole glitter scene himself, as you mentioned? And he says, well, that was almost 4 years ago. I mean, give me a break. Marlon Brando did The Godfather, so he's not always doing On the Waterfront.
The thing is that him and Bowie were just massive rivals, weren't they?
Yeah,
and
that's
by
it.
this point in time, he'd seen Bowie kind of like edging away from it, hadn't he? And thought, oh, right, maybe I need to do the same.
I think that's what it is. And he goes on to have a go at the Sweet. He says, they're nice people, but I can't believe they're still doing what I was doing 4 years ago and the rest of it. He says, I just think the kids will eventually get fed up with it. That's why David Bowie was such a gas. I've known David for 10 years, but the point about him is he didn't just do all that thing. He invented his own way as opposed to copying. That's why I love him.
Fair play.
And goes on to talk about other stuff, including the fact he seems to have this sort of kind of self-loathing to an extent. He said he's invented this persona that he calls this kind of silly, stupid street punk called Marc Bolan. He says there's still a lot I don't like about him and a lot I hate. I know all my shortcomings. The only things that save me, really, are rock and roll and the fact there are 37 million people out there that love me. I feel grateful to my fans in all sincerity, he says.
37 million people. I mean, if he sold 37 million albums, you'd have to say that a lot of them would have been bought by the same people. But I don't, you know.
Maybe he's added them all up over the years. Maybe that was it.
Must be. But, so October 73, this was like 4 months before I saw T-Rex at the Free Trade Hall. That was the second gig that I went to. So Mott the Hoople in November. And then T-Rex in the January of 74. And it still was T-Rex to see. I mean, it was absolute hysteria in there. And it was brilliant.
Yeah,
it was really great. But he didn't manage to shrug off that kind of teen audience, put it that way.
Yeah, I think he found that really difficult. I mean, it really kind of plagued him, didn't it? What did he look like then? Was he just kind of plain short hair? Was he sparkly?
Yeah. I mean, it's a bob cut almost, but it's still curly because he had curly hair, unless he got the old curling tongs out and straightened them all straight as whatever. But it was a great show. It was a great show.
Okay, lovely. Singles front got Osmonds, Peters and Lee, The Goodies, Jimmy Cliff, and Stevie Wonder with Higher Ground.
Okay, let's go there. Stevie Wonder with Higher Ground, whilst occupying lower ground is Bobby Hughes.
What are you trying to say?
I don't know, really.
So we're looking at disc, aren't we? 20th October 1973.
Nice.
What do you remember about 1973?
I remember my first gig with Mott the Hoople and Queen, and being mad on Bowie and keeping a scrapbook which was pretty much full of David Bowie and T-Rex.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow, lovely. Anyway, so talking about the Hoople, so this is Michael Benton, it's called Benton's Disclosures, a bit of a gossipy kind of page to talk about new releases, etc. It says Mott the Hoople is still in the charts with All the Way from Memphis and are looking for their third hit. It looks like coming with a new Ian Hunter composition, Roll Away the Stone. The group at present are on yet another highly successful US tour, but they should be back just in time to see this one roaring into the charts. I wonder how much longer the Bowie influence is going to stay with them. I'm sure they got sick of that really easily, very quickly.
Yeah, and also that American tour must have been the tour that was documented in Diary of a Rock and Roll Star.
It was, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great book.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It is great. Also, I think he's being straight here, though, when he says of Sister Sledge, says, haven't heard much about this lady, but I do know she's no relation to Percy. She has a single out next week called That Mama Never Told Me. American correspondent Lenny Kay in New York, great picture of him looking very studenty. He says Alice Cooper is causing a stir at the New York's Record Plant Studios, assisting with backing vocals were Ronnie Spector and, would you believe, Liza Minnelli. They're recording Teenage Lament for Alice's Muscle of Love album. It goes on to say the hottest unknown group in the country at the minute, ZZ Top, out of the Longhorn state of Texas. Their album Tres Hombres is currently number 36 in the charts without much airplay.
Going back to Alice Cooper, though, you have to wonder, the circles that he kept were really kind of unique, weren't they? We know about the Hollywood Vampires, because I did that interview with him, and he was great, and you got John Lennon and Harry Nilsson and the Monkees and all that. But wasn't it like Salvador Dali?
Groucho Marx? He used to go around to Groucho Marx's every night, I think every night to watch telly, and I think Groucho would fall asleep. They watched telly together, talk, have a few drinks, Groucho would fall asleep, and then Alice would just creep off back to his place.
He'd make sure there was no cigars burning anywhere. Right. All the windows were locked, you know.
Health and safety.
He's not left a deep fat fryer on. He's a sweetheart, Alice
He was
Cooper.
an absolute sweetheart, and I've met him too, and he was just brilliant. Really, really
Yeah,
good.
great.
So centre pages here. Mick Ronson. So Michael Benson goes to meet him at the mixing session for Trident Studios. Says huddled over the vast control panel and confiding in the two technicians who sandwiched him, Ronson was listening to tracks from his forthcoming solo album. He's confident it's going to be a success, and it's rubbed off on me. I'm possibly more confident than he is. He now has to stand on his own, and he's meeting the challenge in the same zestful way that helped to turn Bowie into a legend. Next year, mark my words, is going to be the year of Michael Ronson, he says. As we know, it didn't work out like that, but Ronson isn't, like I say, isn't short of confidence here. He thinks it's really going to happen. He's got Trevor Bolder with him, Ainsley Dunbar on drums, of course.
The thing is that he was managed by the same people as Bowie, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was the main man, wasn't it?
That was the sweetener, wasn't it? And so, of course, the main man philosophy was to make somebody act like a star, so people would think they were a star. And obviously, Mick Ronson was believing him, but Mick Ronson really never was a frontman. I saw that tour, as I say, so that was probably the third gig that I saw after Mott the Hoople and then T-Rex, and then Mick Ronson, and then Lou Reed. So it was a great run to start. But and I loved it, but you listen to the album and it's weak in parts.
Yeah,
There's some great stuff on there, but
great player. As you say, no frontman, was he? It's quite interesting. At one point, it says at this moment the phone rings and Bowie's on the other end. Both he and Mick chat for about 5 minutes. David's spending the day in bed, generally devoting his time to songwriting. When the conversation finishes, Ronson appears to be a much happier man. When asked why, he gave me a secretive smile and told me I wasn't going to find out. He says,
right.
So all the sort of, as you say, all the stuff was in place for him to be a star, but really he wasn't cut out for that at all.
Right.
Lou Reed, a very bizarre encounter here. Interviewed by Ray Fox Cumming. He says, why don't you simply not write a word, said Lou Reed blithely halfway through the mammoth 8-hour session for which this piece emerges. Thankfully, it was a suggestion, not an order, but it's clear that the strange American really wants this British trip to be chronicled in nothing more than a few live reviews. In fact, this particular evening was not so much an interview as just socialising with the man in his hotel. I never interviewed Lou Reed. I know you had encounters, didn't you?
Two.
Okay. In a corner of the room, it says there's a record player with a copy of his new album, Berlin, on it. I asked him if I might put it on. He says, if you like, without any enthusiasm. I ask if he's pleased with it, and he says, yes, I love each and every note, but I'm not sure I want to hear it. However, by the time it reaches the fourth track, How Do You Think It Feels, he leaps up and goes into his dance routine, which is as distinctive as Snoopy's and not that dissimilar. Both feet take off at the same time and pedal the air furiously, while his whole body wriggles and his neat little hands pump purposefully about him. A slight smirk gradually widens into a broad grin as the room begins to fill with assorted members of his crew and his dance becomes a wild self-parody. And it goes on like this.
It was weird, though, because when I saw him again, so the Berlin tour, which took place earlier than this, he played the Palace, and he wasn't well on that tour, I know that. And then he was still kind of using, I think it's fair to say, in the Rock and Roll Animal tour in 1972. But the band were quite funky. It's the Rock and Roll Animal tour, But he used to do that weird little foxy shuffle, which seemed really kind of like incongruous, really.
Yeah.
When you've got this picture of Lou Reed, when you've been listening to him and thinking, is this kind of dude really downplaying everything? But he had the dyed blonde hair, the shades, the leathers, and doing this little funky dance. It was just bizarre.
That is unusual, because I saw him in later years. Unluckily, didn't see him in the early years, but he was just immobile, really, wasn't he? He was just sort of playing up that whole legendary icon thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, talking to Lou Reed.
Marvin Gaye.
Yeah.
Marvin Gaye, Let's Get It On, Mark Riley, Bob Hughes.
Yeah, turned into the soul half hour.
Yeah.
Enemy, 20th of October 1973. Just going back very briefly to that Lou Reed interview, he does say at one point, why do you insist on describing me in your paper as Little Lou? I'm as tall as you are. Certainly in his platform shoes and cheating slightly by raising his heels off the ground, he does make about 6 feet, it says.
Right.
And it goes on. Gigs of the week this week, October 73, got Wizard at Strathclyde University, Elton John at Bellevue in Manchester, which is it was always on the circuit, wasn't it? Bellevue was a gig.
Yeah, I mean, it was at that point in time, it was the biggest venue in Manchester, and it held about 3,000 people, 3,500 or something. So Slade would play there, and the Ooh, and the Stones, people like that. Yeah.
Groundhogs at Barrow-in-Furness Civic Hall, King Crimson at Liverpool Empire, Edgar Broughton Band at Derby King's Hall, and the Four Tops at Southport Theatre. I'm sure there's more, but the gig listings page is missing.
Oh dear.
In the letters front, a very passionate one here. What's wrong with the record buying public these days? Almost everyone misses out the material of the greatest songwriter of all time, Roy Wood. I must admit his singles have done well, from Night of Fear to See My Baby Jive, but his LPs don't get the attention they deserve. I blame the BBC. They don't give him enough airplay. The Move's Message from the Country should have been a #1 album, and the first ELO album should have done the same. Boulders, his solo album, should have been an overnight success. I suggest that so-called music lovers go to a Wizard gig. I was an ardent T-Rex fan until I saw Wizard perform in Doncaster. Then I realised what I was missing. Long live King Roy Wood, from Patrick Monaghan in Doncaster.
It's a fair point.
Yeah.
Genius.
New albums, David Bowie's Pinups gets 3 out of 5 by Ray Fox Cummings, which is probably fair, I think.
I love it, but I mean, you know, it wasn't an ambitious project. It was just a bit of an earner, wasn't it, really?
It was. Gentle Giant in a Glass House. Not an album to dance to, but one to sit down and listen to. Once you've done that, you won't regret it, says the reviewer. And Neil Young's Time Fades Away, which we haven't got time to go into, but Rosalind Russell gives it 1 out of 5 and calls it one of the worst things she's ever heard.
Ouch.
Oh, it's a live album that never made it onto CD, but it's great anyway, so don't believe that. We're not playing it, though, because that would just be daft.
No, we're going to play Faust, the Sad Skinhead, which is so great. Need to say, just once again, tomorrow night we've got 4 specially recorded tracks from Wild Billy Childish and 2 interviews with Billy as well. And then on Thursday, and that's a pre-recorded programme, on Thursday we've got Porridge Radio live in session. I want to say thanks to everybody involved in the programme. Gid is next, and we'll see you, well, we'll kind of see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Marc Riley, BBC 6 Music.
And shut the door on your way out.